I'm in need of a TBR. So I decided to do something I saw some other people do and I thought it would be interesting, which is have a TBR jar site what you read. But usually I see people doing like TBR jar sites what I read in this month or my monthly TBR. For me, we are going to make it a little bit different because I'm going to read the books my TBR jar site and then review it still in this video, and also because I don't have a jar, so I have the cookie jar. It's not like one of those aesthetic jars, it's just a cookie jar. And I have a selection of prompts. Some of them are very general, some of them are a bit more specific, so let's decide. And in order for me to go with blind, I'm not going to put on blindfold. I'm just gonna remove my glasses because it's the same thing. I can still technically see, but I can't really read. So let's choose. The first thing that came out in my prompts is a YA book. And I think I have some of them here. I'm not sure. I think The Queen of Nothing, which is the third book in the Folk of the Air trilogy, it's YA. And what else? The Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I think it's also, yeah, The Good Girl's Guide to Murder is also YA, and I still have the sequel to read. Do Over by Jim Painter, as well as Better Than the Movies by Jim Painter. These two are also YA. I think this is basically all the YA I have at the moment, at least in physical form. I also have like some others, but they are sequels, and sequels of the sequels that I still haven't read. So we'll keep this little selection, and when I finish picking the prompts which side I'll, but by the way, I will be picking 3 prompts because I think that's a good amount of books for me to read. Now let's pick a second one. Oh, this is one of the prompts I didn't want to. It's a book that intimidates me, and this means it will be a very long book. So we have Women Who Won Revolvers by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I think this is over, like, yeah, it's over 500 pages. And it is a nonfiction about the myths and the archetype of the wild woman. And it's 500 pages. It's a nonfiction that is 500 pages long. It will take me quite some time to read, so that intimidates me. But this one, it will intimidate me more. But this one intimidates me even more, and I'm not going to read it for this video. Sorry. It is The Second Sex by Simone de Beauvoir, and I'm not going to choose this one, not right now. So we can put it back in its place. And what else intimidates me? Ooh, my TBR is falling. You have Don Quixote by Cervantes. It's long. It's a long book. It's a long book. It's a long book. You also have Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, which is a book I started reading when I was 16, and I stopped at page 260, and even though I was really enjoying it, I never finished, and for this reason I'll put it in the pile of books that intimidate me, because for some reason I stopped. And it is also a long book. We'll choose one of these. Now let's go for the third prompt. Hopefully it will be a good prompt. My TBR is falling, but we'll fix that later. This is a very long prompt, which means it'll be very specific. Pick a random pen and then a book that matches the pen. I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote prompt, but let's do this. So here is my cup of colorful pens. Let's pick a random pen and a book that matches it, shall we? Green. We need a green book. Do I have a green book? I do have a green book. I have this one by George Orwell, which is Keep the Thing Flying, the Aspidastra Flying. Let's put it the name on the screen because I don't know how to pronounce it. We have the one book my mom keeps recommending me, which is The 48 Laws of Power, but because I already need a book that intimidates me, I don't think I will be reading the one. I think this one kind of matches. No, it's more of like a teal, this one, which is It Starts With Us by Colin Hoover. We also have this one by Margaret Atwood, which is a dystopia. And we also have Sisters of the Revolution, which is a selection of short stories of feminist speculative fiction short stories, which was organized by Jeff and Anne Vandermeer. Let's check the selection of books I have to choose. By exclusion, I'm not reading the 48 Laws of Power. The YA, I think I'm going with Queen of Nothing by Holly Black because I recently read The Wicked King and I'm in love with the series, so I'll take the excuse and I'm going to finish this one. Then we have the books that intimidates me. That's the part that is difficult because I don't know what to choose. I'm going with Jane Eyre. After 10 years, I'm reading Jane Eyre. Now for the green book. I think I already have fantasy and I already have very long books. But I think I'll go with Sisters of the Revolution, which is the selection of short stories because it just seems fun. That's my excuse. So yeah, this is my selection that my dear TBR Jar selected it for me. We have some YA fantasy, we have some classics, we have speculative fiction. Hello, so it's been way more than a week. It's been actually quite a bit of time since I did that whole TBR Jar chooses what I read in a week because, you know, who could tell that reading 2 books with more than 500 pages, one of them with 600 pages, and a classic novel, the other one an anthology that was not very bingeable, would take some time. It took a bit of time. But now let's talk about the 3 books I set myself to read in this video. So the first one is Sisters of the Revolution, a feminist science fiction, a feminist speculative fiction anthology, which was organized by Anne Vandermeer and Jeff Vandermeer. This book features 30 short stories by female or female identifying authors from all over the world, from a variety of different eras, different styles. It's kind of difficult to review an anthology because it's natural that with 30 short stories by so many different authors, there will be some you enjoy more, others that you enjoy a little bit less. But overall, I really like the short stories. They were interesting, they make you think, but also on the not very good side is that this anthology is from 2015 and some of these stories, they are older than 2015, but it's kind of crazy for me to think about, but 2015 was almost 10 years ago. That being said, some of the stories, even though they are actually much older than 10 years, sometimes they felt little bit dated, a little bit too much of its time. Others, they're just so great. At times, there were some stories that on its own they would thrive and I would love them, but in the context of this anthology, at times it felt kind of repetitive with the fact that there are some short stories with very similar themes and that deal with these themes in very similar manners. I would still recommend this anthology for anyone that likes speculative fiction and wants to explore the world of feminist speculative fiction. I think there are some stories I might go back in this book to reread someday in the future, but yeah, it's kind of like okay. I would give it a 4 stars. Now let's move on to the second book, which is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. Did I say the prompts? I don't really remember some of the prompts, okay? It's been a while. I believe Sisters of the Revolution, the prompt was something about a pen, and I ended up getting a green book. And Jane Eyre was a book that that intimidated me. I think I said in the beginning of the video, but I started reading Jane Eyre around 10 years ago, and then I got halfway through the book and for some reason I stopped reading. Now, thanks to technology and a very timely reminder, like I got a pop-up from my photo app saying, remember this time in your life? Yeah, and then I remember why I stopped reading this book midway. Basically, I went on a vacation and Jane Eyre is a heavy book, so I left it behind and I just forgot to finish. But now I finished. What is the plot of Jane Eyre? So Jane Eyre follows Jane Eyre. Jane is an orphan and she starts her life. She loses her parents before she can even remember them, and then she spends a time living with these rich relatives that doesn't necessarily, they objectively, they don't treat her well. So she ends up going to this boarding school, which is a charity boarding school for orphans, and she spends most of her life there. And then one day she decides to go out and she ends up being hired to be the tutor for this little girl that is her guardian is this very rich nobleman, Mr. Rochester. One of the things that made me love Jane Eyre, the book, so much is that you can read it from multiple, not point of views, but there are a lot of different genres you can focus on when reading Jane Eyre. It can be a coming of age story because we follow Jane grow from being a little girl, and then the bulk of the story is Jane from the ages of 18 to 19. So, and also meeting and exploring the real world for the first time. So you can read this book from the point of view of a coming of age story. You can read this book as a romance novel of the relationship between Jane and Mr. Rochester. You can also, not to give spoilers, but you can also read this book as like a psychological thriller, a bit of a horror, and it's just so fascinating. The writing is also so fascinating. It's so beautiful. Also, the writing is just so incredible. It's so beautiful. I found some of my new favorite quotes. One of them, I'm not going to read it, but I'm just looking at it because I actually highlighted. I'm not a person that highlights my book, but this one was just so good. I needed to highlight it, and like the story is incredible. It's incredible how relatable Jane is, even after all these years. It's just so wow. It's just so relatable. It's also funny. It's a very funny book. Why don't people talk about Jane Eyre being a funny book? Also, why this book had me giggling all the time, so in awe all the time for the 600 pages that this book took. Another thing, I think it's rare for a book to have enough plot or to have enough things to say to justify it having 500 to 600 pages. My edition has 605 pages, but Jane Eyre, yes, Jane Eyre justifies having 600 pages. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars because even though I really enjoyed, I was really compelled, I wanted to keep reading this book all the time. I could, but yeah, it's a heavy book. But it is a well-loved. Look at Spine. This is a well-loved book. But even though I really wanted to constantly be reading this book, there were moments I thought the plot was kind of slow, very slow, and I needed a pause and to read something else, which honestly it's not something uncommon. I am a person that feels the need to read multiple books at the same time. It's just a me thing. I get bored quite easily. But there were some moments in this book that I felt were kind of slow and I found myself drifting off a bit, but then I would quickly come back. Those parts, by the way, were when Mr. Rochester had the visitors in the Thornfield Hall, and also during the third act conflict where we get introduced to the new characters. And for most part for me that was fine, but a little bit before it started to end, this phase started to end, I thought it was dragging a bit. But overall, if you haven't read Jane Eyre, you should read Jane Eyre. The book is incredible, it's magical, it's a new favorite, and I should have read it, finished reading it 10 years ago, and I should have reread it now because it's just so incredible. The hype is real. There's a reason this one is a classic, okay? I need to upload somewhere willing display or write a big board saying read Jane Eyre. Now let's move on to the next book I set myself to read, which is a contemporary one. It's The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black. This is the third book in the Folk of Dare trilogy, and because this is the third and the conclusion of that series, I can't say much about this book without giving you spoilers for the whole series. What I'm going to say though, just like the two previous books in the series, I couldn't put it down when I started reading because it's just so incredible, so entertaining. I love this world, I love the characters. Judith, I can't wait to read the King of Elfheim and the other stories, which is kind of like the prequel slash spin-off, the book with the short stories about Garden, because this book's just, oh my god, it was just so fun. That being said, I thought overall it felt a little bit rushed. The conclusion was cool and all, but it was just a little bit rushed. I think it could have done with 10-20 pages more. And that's it for this video on TBR Jar. Just is what I read in a week, and it ends up taking me multiple weeks to finish reading. So if you like this video, give a like, subscribe, and I will see you soon. Bye!